What's up, YouTube? I'm Debt Free Joel. The Federal Reserve just released the fact that they're not going to raise interest rates for this month. What does that mean for your money? Well, I wanted to come on here and kind of give you a brief rundown of what that actually means, how you can prepare for it, and what you should do in terms of making any adjustments. Long story short, the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates over the last year and a half now, approximately, because they wanted to combat inflation. You got to understand how this started. When we were all at home during COVID, one of the things that we did correctly was that we saved money, right, because we weren't traveling, and we paid down our credit cards. Well, once they opened the economy, we went nuts. We started swiping credit cards, we started burning through our savings, and inflation went through the roof. Remember when you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't buy a car, trying to find a used car, these prices were over 20-30% higher. Remember that time? Well, now we're paying for it via the higher interest rates that the Federal Reserve is imploring. And I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. But one of the things that the Federal Reserve is trying to do with the higher interest rates is to bring down inflation. The way that they do this is pretty simple. When they raise interest rates, what they do is they make the cost of borrowing more expensive. Have you noticed that the interest rate on your credit card is the highest it's ever been since 1986, I believe? Have you noticed that we have $1 trillion in credit card debt after we paid off a good portion of credit card debt during COVID? Have you noticed that companies now, when they want to buy something, it gets more expensive for them to finance the debt because those bonds rates are increasing? What you're starting to realize is if people want to borrow money right now, it gets more expensive. That is the whole point of raising interest rates. So every single month for God knows how long now, maybe 2 years, the Federal Reserve has kept raising that rate. When they raise the rate for borrowing increases at the same time. So now we're in the point of being at June, right? Where they're going to say, all right, we're going to put a pause on the amount of interest rates increasing. Why? Because inflation has come down from 8% to 5%, which is still excessive. But the problem is that they don't know what to do. That's the fact. The Federal Reserve right now has no idea what to do because here's the problem. Even with inflation coming down, people are still spending money. But here's the kicker. They're spending money not on things that they don't need, right? Because remember, when the economy opened up, we started buying everything under the sun, going on vacations, living our best life. Well, now people are swiping credit cards not just for the things that they want, but for the things that they need. People are swiping credit cards to go to the grocery store. Think about that. That means that they're trying to sustain their ability to eat by going on debt, and that is a problem. At the same time, the economy isn't responding the same way it should because of the interest rate increases, right? What happens is that if the Federal Reserve raises interest rates too fast and too high, it could push it to a recession. But what you're seeing is that the economy is kind of wavering, right? It's kind of like people are still spending money, people are still going on vacation, inflation is still high, but unemployment isn't kicking in the way it should. But businesses are cutting back on spending. So what is happening? Well, the Federal Reserve doesn't know. So that's why they're pressing the pause button. They're saying, all right, we're not going to raise interest rates. We're going to sit back and watch how this goes. But if you notice, based on his terminology during the time of actually speaking about the interest rate increases, they're not exactly excited here. We didn't, turn the corner. We're not going to prevent a recession. They're just trying to figure out what to do. One of the things I think that's important, though, is because the student loan repayments are going to start again sometime in the fall. I think it's going to be in October. So you could probably watch one of my other videos for that. But the interest that you're going to be charged on your student loans start in September, and your payments are likely going to start in October. That's, to me, going to be one of the big triggers in terms of a recession. The reason being is because people are already, remember, they're swiping their credit cards for things that they need, not things that they want right now. And then they're going to have to come up with an extra $400 or $500 every month to pay for their student loans. Where's this money going to come from? So I think that's what the Federal Reserve is anticipating. They're anticipating some rough times going ahead. They're anticipating that a recession is still on the table. They thought the recession would have happened a lot sooner. We had three banking crises in the last 6 months, which has been insane. But the market has been roughly resilient. I think it's also because people had so much bent up savings and debt that they can incur that right now we're getting to the brink of people starting to get maxed out on their credit cards. They're starting to have no savings anymore. People are starting to cut back on their spending. I think something you should think about is that Companies are looking at the way they can cut back on costs. Remember, if a company can't borrow money, what they're going to do is figure out ways to cut costs. And the most expensive cost for a company is you, the employee. So your company right now may be looking at ways to cut back on their expenses, which could be layoffs, right? This is another reason why the Federal Reserve is taking the foot off the gas for a month, just to see what kind of happens, right? Will firms start doing layoffs on their own? Will they keep things status quo? We'll see. So what should you do, right? The whole point of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates is to hopefully stop the economy from spiraling out of control in terms of hyperinflation. What should you do? Business as usual. You should be getting out of debt. You should be building up your savings account to 3 to 6 months of your expenses. And that includes everything from the mortgage to Netflix and everything in between. All your expenses should be added up, times that by 3, times that by 6. That's the number you want in your savings account. But that's what you should be shooting for. You should still be investing via your 401k. You don't have to open your own brokerage account and pick your own stocks. You can invest via your 401k. You can invest via some mutual funds that just track the market. The point of it is to invest over the long term and to compound your returns over time. But something to consider. The Federal Reserve did not say that they won't increase rates further. And they're not going to tell you that a recession is no longer on the table. It just means that they're hitting the pause button right now to see what the effects of all those interest rate increases are going to be over the next couple of months or so, which means you should be prepared for anything. Again, 3 to 6 months of expenses. You should be living below your means. You should still be investing in the stock market, and you should be trying to do your best to make sure you and your family are well prepared for whatever happens. So I just wanted to come out here and give you guys my thoughts on that. If you have any questions, cool. If you like these type of videos, cool. Feel free to click the like and subscribe button. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's the same name as YouTube, at Debt Free Joel. We put a ton of information. Some of it's comedy, but we put a ton of information on there about saving, about investing, and most importantly, about being charitable. So until next time, just remember, you got food at home.